Just after 3:30. If you just tuned in, good afternoon. I'm Gareth Edwards. Dan is away for today's edition of the show. 4 o'clock this afternoon, the BRICS opening session gets underway. We'll take you live there once it begins. For the moment, though, we need to talk about the vandalism and the theft that is continuing to make the power cuts worse in our country. The blackouts continue to hamper the delivery of services around South Africa as well. One example, a very real example, is Rand Water's pumping facilities in Johannesburg. In fact, we saw this in Johannesburg a couple of weeks ago when one of the pumping stations went down because there was no power for a continued period of time. Well, let's speak to energy analyst Mohamed Madhi, who's always very gracious with his time. Mohamed, good to have you with us on today. And before we get into how do we fix this, if right now, as in today, Mohamed, there was no blackouts, would our water infrastructure function properly, or is it now being damaged because of the blackouts? Could we get out of this with our water infrastructure?
That's a great question, and good afternoon to you and the viewers. Look, the water infrastructure is quite severely impacted by the load shedding and the effect it has on a lot of the equipment that's required to deliver water to end users. So there's no doubt that if you stop the load shedding, you'll have some degree of improvement in the water infrastructure. However, there has been damage done over this period of load shedding to key pieces of equipment. At the very least, it's reduced the life of some of that equipment, and this is going to be felt, as we go along over a period of time.
So when you now start looking at the kind of damage that has already been done and the kind of damage that we're expecting, because right now, yes, I had Panyaza Sufi saying to me in Gauteng, come the end of December, January, blackouts will be nearly over. But the kind of damage which experts are saying could take place over 2-3 years, just how bad do you think this could get? Could we see a collapse of water infrastructure because of Eskom?
Look, I think we won't see a collapse. And fortunately, with the water infrastructure, although it's significant, although it's costly, it's not going to be as difficult to fix as some other pieces of infrastructure and as the electricity grid itself. So I do not foresee a complete breakdown of the water infrastructure. But maybe I should address the point where, you have Panyaza and Sufi and others making comments about when load shedding is going to end. The fact is, with due respect, these officials need to keep to their areas of expertise. You cannot make statements prior to an election coming so soon solely for the purpose of trying to placate the electorate. There is no scientific basis, there is no engineering basis for the statements being made that load shedding will come to an end. It's not, and nothing has been shared in terms of what's going on with the actual system, with the plants, with the grid, to lend credence to this point of view.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why when I had the Gauteng Premier on this morning, Mohamed, and I asked him this, I said, everything that any politician says to me right now, and I'm sure it's the same for every other journalist on eNCA, everything that gets said now sounds like electioneering to me, because we're building up to the elections. But there were no facts except the answer that he did give me, Mohamed, where in State of the Nation address this year, 1.2 billion rand or 1.3 billion rand set aside just for Gauteng to deal with the infrastructure issues. But this goes beyond money, doesn't it, in Gauteng?
Yeah, and also to put the 1.3 billion rand in context, it's a drop in the ocean of what is required to fix the structure just in Gauteng.
Yeah.
So absolutely true. And it is quite sad that we have this election year. It's understandable, of course, it's what happens in a normal country when you come close to elections. But what's sad in our particular case is, the impact of load shedding is very specific. It's very deep. It's very wide in this country. Many businesses are feeling it. Many individuals are feeling it. The middle class in particular and not so well off are feeling it particularly hard. And, I think we should have a degree of respect for this from officials in the election year. Don't make promises that are wildly speculative and certainly not going to come true as predicted now.
Yeah, well, this is what I was asking the Premier. Not much has been able to be resolved in 15 odd years, probably more, depending who you ask. And now suddenly between the 22nd of August and the end of December, miraculously, Gauteng load shedding is not going to be a thing. It was a difficult situation to try and improve, but that's why I'm glad I'm talking to you now. I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, you know BRICS is on the go at the moment. And now there's this deal between South Africa and China as well, saying that he met with the Chinese counterpart, this is President Ramaphosa, signing a number of agreements. Is China, to your mind, I know I'm going off track here a little bit, Mohamed, forgive me, is China our get-out-of-jail-free card when it comes to blackouts?
Look, unfortunately not. The Chinese can help, as can many other countries assist. But there's this tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of money that needs to be spent. And it needs to be very clear how that money is going to be brought forward, going to be made available, and what are we going to be trading off as a result of that. Let me also just quickly, add to what I said earlier with regard to the electioneering. It doesn't apply to any one particular party. So while one party may tell you blackouts are going to end, another party will tell you it will never end. And of course, both are speculative and not based on scientific evidence. So we just need to be aware of that. It's not any particular party. But coming back to China, if we look at the record in Africa, the Chinese have helped with certain forms of infrastructure, but it's a long process. There have been very significant trade-offs for the countries involved, not the least of which is a lack of skills transfer to the recipient countries. And in some cases, like Botswana, you find, what has been built by the Chinese has not always been to the necessary specification or requirement that we need in this country.
Yeah, and there is the problem. Then the Chinese, they bring their experts over, they put a project in place. Their experts, who are very competent, it seems, then leave back to that part of the world, and our poor engineers who might not know the system are left to try and fix it. And so the hamster wheel keeps going around. Mohamed, it's always wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much indeed in joining us this afternoon. I appreciate Mohamed because he's always willing to go another direction with me, not just the water infrastructure, but also what the president had said about China ahead of BRICS as well. So I really do appreciate Mohamed taking time for me this afternoon. One of our regular energy analysts, always explains very nicely, Mohamed Madhi, joining us today here on eNCA.